Welcome everybody. This is my first physical conference since years. Happy to be here. Thanks to the organizers that take the effort to take this risky event, and hopefully we can engage in more of these personal interactions in the future. Topic of today is energy citizenship, which is an emerging concept. It gets a lot of attention and a lot of projects, among which mine is working on that sample to investigate what citizens want and what they can do, and in what way can they be mobilized to speed up the road towards energy transition as well as climate neutrality. Let me kick off with a couple of slides to set the scene. Yeah.
And here on the PowerPoint. You are done in Spanish as well.
Okay, that's it.
And now you have to go on configuration, see? And yeah, this one.
Okay, thank you very much. Please use for those that are listening to this online, please use the chat for your comments throughout the presentations. We will have a couple of questions and answers after each presentation, and we have some sort of discussion at the end.
Loro dovrebbero, perché adesso loro vedono questo. Quindi bisogna fare.
Just one moment.
Loro vedono questo, qui dobbiamo duplicare un monitor.
Scusate, sorry for the interruption.
Apri.
It's sorry. I will try again. Share screen. This one.
Prima andava bene.
Okay, now you see the entire screen, or the presentation mode, or not?
No, not presentation.
Okay. Sarà duplicare?
Duplica.
Now, yes.
Now, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry for the interruption, Mark.
Okay, no problem. So I'm Mark van Wees. I work with the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. We are involved in one big European project where energy citizenship plays a big role. So therefore, my personal interest in this topic. I've just Googled around, and you get a lot of hits when you talk about energy citizens, and from both private sector, public sector, citizens organization. And one most striking quote is on the top left, is somebody say, we need to put citizens at the center of energy transition. And the big question is, what does that mean? How do we do that? And what will then be the impact compared to the more traditional, let's say, way of pushing the energy transition? What is new? What is the added value? So these are the key questions which we want basically to explore in this session. So I'm an analyst, so I really want to quantify the contribution of energy citizenship towards this very challenge that the cities have put themselves to become climate neutral in 2030, 2040. So what contribution does this make in comparison to the more economic technical solutions? And then what kind of citizenship has then the most impact? Because there are different ways that a citizen can become active in the energy transition. And then throughout Europe, many ways are explored and piloted to promote and work with citizens to come up with a stronger involvement. So let's look at that. So we have 5 presentations from a diversion of different projects, most of them European. So I will start. I work with the Unclear project with Amsterdam. Then Community Exchange, a sister project also dealing with positive energy districts, will look at the ways to empower energy citizenship through a range of different tools. Equivalent is making cities that are working with energies to support PED designs. So how are you going to design an area to become energy positive, and how to involve the energy citizenship? A very specific field of engagement is in education. The next one, and then the last presentation will focus on how to work with citizens to model increased engagement. So start with my presentation. Looking at the impact. We in Atelier project, just a short introduction. It deals with positive energy districts. We are going to implement two of those in Amsterdam and in Bilbao, and we have a range of fellow cities that will learn and scale these solutions up. And this is really a mix of different disciplines that work. It's an energy system issue, it's economic system, it is policy planning, but it is also a city vision level, and it deals with citizens that work in the districts. So if you look at what positive energy districts are, they're supposed to be energy efficient, energy flexible, use of batteries to balance supply and demand, should produce in the end net greenhouse gas emissions. And there will be an interaction between the buildings, a smart interaction, the users, the inhabitants, the residents, but also other stakeholders and other wider scale energy mobility and ICT system. And then it is not only about environment, it is also about good living, social objectives in the area, economic objectives in the area, and sustainability issues on district level. So it's very multi-domain, which makes it there's another definition which basically says the same. So the thing of positive energy district is it is a holistic approach which offers a huge potential between the social, economic, and technical domain, but it makes it also very complex. So, and then the question is, where does the citizen come into that when you look at the district energy transition? Energy citizenship, yeah, a couple of definitions. It's supposed to make people active, not just a passive consumer, but a prosumer, actively engaging in the way people use or produce energy. It is about increased awareness on what energy you use and how you use it. The term of prosumer is becoming more popular. So citizens can not only consume passively, they can also produce, either individual by putting PV on your roof, but also collectively in a cooperative, in an energy community. And they can be individuals, but they can also be organized in public entities or in small businesses. So it can have different dimensions. And if you look at the impact, it will also strongly depend on what kind of impact you want to achieve. Energy community is strongly related, is also a very, very emerging topic. It is also promoted by EU regulation to empower energy community to become a player in the energy markets. Important is that they contribute to the increased popular acceptance. There's a lot of any renewable energy projects in the city face a lot of resistance often by citizens. So it's very important that they become involved in the decision making. We have one example in Amsterdam where we have one area who voted predominantly the Greens, and then there was a project on wind power near that area, and then suddenly everybody was opposed, although it was the greenest voting area in Amsterdam. That kind of mechanisms that can only be, and the resistance can only be solved when you work with the citizens. It's also by direct financing, the amount collective volume of finances that is available at the level of private citizens, it's much bigger than public finance. So if you can motivate people to invest in PV in the area, that will make a huge difference. So in Amsterdam, that's the question of replication. Dit is gewoon Schip. This is maybe the most advanced energy community in Europe, at least the floating one. So it's a smart grid, highly efficient, a lot of renewable heat pumps, energy management systems, battery storage, and these citizens are very, very engaged. So this is used as a demo, as an embryo. The problem is, these are very high income people and very aware. So what happens if you want to duplicate these concepts to other demographics in the city? Is that possible? Or is energy citizenship only a thing when you are green and have a high income that you're interested in that? And that is an issue that is explored throughout Europe now. Just to finalize, it is important that we start tracking the pathways. How can energy citizens activities lead to reduction of greenhouse gas emissions? And for that to understand that, then we need to find the cause and effect. What do they do that in the end will reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And it depends on the level of the specific activity of energy citizenship. Is it individual? Is it collective? Does it do with behavior? Has it to do with investment? And one thing we are doing in Atelier now is tracking the key impact pathways, this causal relationship between activities by citizens and, in the end, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And I want to just to wrap it up with one activity which is now gets a lot of attention is the local energy trading. Why don't you allow people within a district to trade with one another? Isn't that could that give a motivation or an increased business case for renewable energy within the logic? So that's now currently being explored and investigated. And for that, you need to depict and map the interaction. On the left, you have what you start with, and on the right, you have greenhouse gas emissions. And you see a lot of steps need to be taken to, in the end, make sure that local energy trading results in greenhouse gas emissions. So there needs to be an interest by citizens that are willing to trade, that are willing to pay more for local energy. You need ICT systems in place. You need a certain trading volume to be achieved, and that should lead to valuable business cases to increase renewable energy sources in the district. And private parties need to be convinced to invest more. So this is an example of the impact pathways we need to develop for energy citizenship to become more knowledgeable about their impact, as well as the best ways to promote them. So my answer to this question we are now facing with: can local citizens, energy communities reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the city significantly? And that's a question that the city wants to know. In fact, we don't know yet. And what I said, impact pathways need to be drawn and validated in our pilots. Important is also the decoupling of these different domains. You see people promoting energy citizenship from a technical point of view, from an environmental point of view, but it also serves many social objectives: inclusivity, democracy. And these are very different societal objectives, which partly complementary, but also partly unrelated. And that's in the discussion often mixed. So we need to clearly separate that and distinguish impact pathways towards both. Yeah, and what I said, upscaling, involvement of new demographics in the city, beyond the front-running greenies, and that's pretty uncharted territory. So that's a big challenge for the projects we are now engaged on in many cities in Europe. So let me say, what shall we do? A couple of questions. How we are on time? Let's take a couple of questions. Yeah.
Yeah. You can go on question and answer over here. Yeah, this is the first question.
The first questions. Yes, of course. Yeah, from no. So he or she asked, are greenhouse gas emissions the only important aspect when you talk about impact of energy system? No, it serves environmental, it serves economic. You could get lower energy prices for citizens. You get business development of local energy services. So, and you have social objective, inclusivity, reduction of energy poverty, democracy. So you have technical, environmental, social, and economic impacts that collectively could be achieved by energy citizenship, which make the issue more complex. So, no more questions in the audience. I will repeat the question when you...
Yes, so you were talking about the energy communities, and in this I was wondering, is there already an indication how big these communities should be, or what the ideal amount of people involved is, or is it still too early?
The question was on energy communities, say the collective action of energy citizenship, how big should that be? Well, that is how many people should be there. That's a good question. We also don't know yet. There will be a balance between, of course, you want the members to be actively participating. It should be dealing with the district to which people can relate. So you would expect it to be a bit smaller, but on the other hand, the economic effects, the economies of scale when you start investing, require a bigger volume in financing projects. So that's something that is still open for debate, and it will probably be a mix of a couple of bigger ones that cover maybe a city, and a lot more on smaller ones. So that's still very much in development. Good, let's go to the next presentation.
You should let them present, no?
Yeah.
They can do it themselves.
You can do it yourself. Who is on? Yes.
I think it's us then.
Yeah, I think it's also you there. Please.
Okay, and we need the other window. We need the other window. This is also the presenter view. That one, yeah.
This one, yeah.
If you can full screen that one, it should be fine.
Okay. It's not clear how I do that.
Green button on the top left.
Okay.
One of the standard ones. That should, yeah, that should be good enough.
Okay. Fine. Do you want to?
Okay. Can you jump back? Can you jump to our slide? This kind of started from the beginning now again. Yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is a joint presentation by Helena, who just is running the slides for the rest of the session, and me, Dirk, for the quick introduction. We're presenting the City Exchange project, and we're talking about community exchange as a toolkit for empowered energy citizenship. So basically, the topic that Mark introduced from his side of view, we have quite a lot of these projects now running in Europe, trying to do localized energy transition, working with the communities, figuring out which approaches with which methods and which tools work, and bringing that then forward into not only the project, but also into the overall practice that will happen within cities. And we just have a very brief introduction before I hand over. If you can switch the slide. So the overall approach for Positive City Exchange, our project, is to aim at the localized energy transition through positive energy blocks, which quite a lot of other projects by now are also doing. So local energy blocks that generate more energy than they need through very different types of measures that enable trading between them, that include mobility as an additional use of energy, and try to build this out from smaller blocks to districts to basically allow local renewable generation to decentralize the energy system, and then at the same time to bring the citizens, the other stakeholders, the tenants, and the whole community with them to basically link these technical parts and the community aspects that are important for actually the sustainability and really the take-up of these solutions. And we are working with and across all the different disciplines that are needed. We are trying to take the view of all these different perspectives as well to enable some solutions that hopefully will work not just in the cities we work with, but also in other places. And there are also then, as part of that, we work across different strategic and operational levels, different views, because as Mark also said, this is quite a complex topic with lots of different views and stakeholders. And one way we do that is through a concept called open innovation and co-creation. So we want to work with citizens, with civil society, with the community overall. And we know that we don't have all the solutions ourselves. So this is also something that brings these questions back to the communities, to other stakeholders, to enable them to participate and also to propose own solutions. One more slide. And our expected impact is at multiple levels. So we look at overall systemic change in the energy systems, in the mobility systems, in the way cities do business. But then we also look at the individual level, but more at a collective approach. So the community approach, because just putting this all onto the individual, of course, does not work. So it's a lot on this kind of thing in the middle. How do we do some collective local action that empowers people to do something, but also looking at the scales around it, so it is well embedded and it makes sense in the larger scale. So then it's about behavior change there, but not just the pure thing. How do you deal with your life, but also how do you deal with the area that you're working with? Can you also get organizational changes in companies, in the city administration, etc.? And then we're also looking at the participation on the direct energy issues, but also the indirect ones. Not everyone in a community like that has a direct way to change too much. A lot of these approaches go towards someone that owns their own building and can manage things. If you're a tenant somewhere, it's much harder, so we try to broaden this up. So not just the energy communities, but also co-creation, other types of engagement. And then we also try to activate kind of the whole innovation ecosystem around it and try to make the community part of that. And the last part of this list is the Bold City Vision approach, which is very much focused on the strategic transitions that cities need to do to make this happen, and to also give them tools of how to organize this very high level change and to align overall strategies down to the very local level again. That's my introduction, and then I'm handing over to Helena for the details on how the actual tools look like.
Hi, I'm Helena from the University. I'm getting an echo. Are you hearing that? Hello?
Yes, we are hearing a bit of echo.
Okay, I think it's better now. Yeah, so I'm going to present the community exchange, a series of concepts which were developed in order to enable the top-down and bottom-up processes of engagement that are necessary to engage the broad range of stakeholders that need to participate in order to decarbonize our cities through the creation and replication of positive energy blocks and districts. The first framework, called the Bold City Vision, places the creation of positive energy blocks and districts and the city's clean energy transition within a broader UN SDG context. And implementation of the framework in the cities identifies kind of pathways towards decarbonisation, which are integrated into the city development and strategic management processes. The second framework, called the Citizen Participation Playbook, includes best practice guidance on citizen engagement. It contains a kind of a catalogue of face-to-face and digital tools which cities can use. And it includes 4 processes for citizen engagement and co-creation, including things like participatory budgeting, co-design of urban interventions, citizen solutions, and collaborative legislation. It also includes city-specific recommendations on how to enhance existing participation infrastructure within the cities. The third framework, called the Innovation Playground, is a spatial and socioeconomic framework which is intended to create the conditions for innovation and co-creation. And it contains kind of another catalogue, and it allows the cities to audit what they have in terms of the data that can contribute, the places which can host events and activities around decarbonisation, and also a kind of a list of enabling mechanisms, funding opportunities, etc., that can be employed, and a range of activities that can help animate the innovation ecosystem. The next framework is one about learning and education and enabling the next generation smart citizen. And this really was kind of organized around a set of principles and a dynamic catalogue of resources which are available on the Positive City Exchange website. And then we have the Positive Energy Champion Network. And this is about identifying early adopters of clean energy innovation within the cities, and they undergo energy champion training, and their function really is to model the change. Well, they're really seen as co-innovators within this innovation ecosystem, and I'll come back to that in the next slide. And the final one is the Innovation Lab, which is really at the heart of this innovation ecosystem, and it's a physical space which is connected, or a portal to the city's digital platforms to lower the threshold to participation. And in the implementation of the frameworks in the cities, we're beginning to see the potential of their integrated operation to enable positive cycles of collaboration between the range of citizens who we need to contribute to envisioning a decarbonised future for the city, and that this positive cycle of collaboration has the potential to lead to an acceleration of this transition. The specific citizen roles that we're seeing emerge is this role of co-innovator. And we've used a framework which was developed by Nambuson and Nambuson, where citizens are seen as contributing as explorers, ideators, designers, and diffusers. And our Positive Energy Champion campaign has 4 different strands to allow citizens to explore these roles within the project. Citizens can animate the innovation playground through participation in open calls. So this is one of the processes from our citizen participation playbook. As energy champions, introducing this knowledge within their communities and networks, and also in a more obvious way as participants in energy communities, and as prosumers or active prosumers that Mark referred to in his presentation. And really, we see that this kind of more holistic role for citizens in the context of a just transition, that citizens can broaden participation and take ownership of the changes that need to happen. In our implementation in Limerick, we have some early results of the implementation of the DPEB Innovation Lab. So we've run a series of open calls focused on certain themes around clean energy, clean and renewable energy. And we're currently building a repository, a digital repository for the documentation of these open calls. And this is going to create a very interesting data set where we get citizens' images of the city and their accounts of how they engage with the clean energy transition of the city, and this accumulation of knowledge over time, and the fact that it's it's going to be made publicly accessible, creates the potential for people in the city to self-select these opportunities and processes, to kind of further replicate and expand the approach. So our conclusions really are that projects like Positive City Exchange can initiate or operate as living labs for cities to develop how they engage with citizens, and also to initiate the urban transitions. And that we are seeing this potential through this living lab approach to initiate positive cycles of collaboration. I suppose the important point here is that this is continuing collaboration, which might be distinct from existing city governance and engagement processes. Some questions we have are how do we we replicably build local relationships? How do we meaningfully and sustainably involve citizens, and which approaches work in the long term? And these are all interconnected. That, you know, we've developed approaches within the project, and it'll be very interesting to see which ones can be sustained beyond the lifetime of the project in the cities. I think that's it.
Thank you, Dirk and Helena. I'm looking at the audience for questions to these speakers. Please.
Yes, thank you. So I guess it's for both, but mostly about Helena, because you were the last to talk about it. But I find it really interesting that you described the idea of the citizens' roles as explorers, ideators, designers, and diffusers. It kind of has a very strong base into the whole kind of design thinking and how people can be directly involved. But in what way did that actually happen, and how did you address the kind of diversity of participation? Because we know, naturally some people will step out and they will take that role, but how, in your case, how did you see that happening? Was it, naturally some people were involved and took those roles? Did you kind of prescribe these roles, or in what way did it actually work out?
Did you hear the question, or shall I repeat it? Okay, the question was that the speaker found it very interesting that you classify the citizens in their different types, explorer and the other types. And then the question was, how did that work in practice? Is that something that automatically comes when you engage in citizen, the diversification or the classification, or is that something that you guide? Or that you first communicate and then they choose? Is that the?
Something like that. Yeah, did it work organically? And how did the diversity work? Was there any diversity?
What? Yeah, and was there any diversity? How does that work in the end?
I can maybe answer that with reference to the Positive Energy Champion campaign, which is running in Limerick at the moment. So I think there are two aspects. One is the diversity of the participants in the campaign, and I think we would experience what many cities experience, which is that there are people who tend to volunteer for these roles. And that's something we're going to address going forward with more targeted campaigns. But within the campaign itself, we have these 4 themes. I think they're called Be the Change, Build Capacity for Change, Prototype the Change, and Amplify the Change. And they relate directly to the co-innovator roles for citizens. And we kind of expected there were kind of thematic strands as well, which tended to incorporate one of the roles. But what's happened, because the champions developed their own step-by-step plan for change, and that they have kind of migrated across all 4 kind of roles as co-innovators through their campaigns. They're testing out and engaging with digital tools. They're holding events with their communities. So they're what's amazing really is that they have this capacity. The people who are engaging have the capacity to migrate across the full range of the roles of co-innovators. So we didn't impose these roles. They were self-selected, and it gave a lot of scope for the creativity of citizens in the campaign.
We got a big question in the chat from Beatrice, my colleague from Amsterdam, by the way. To Helena, what have been your biggest struggles so far when you try to implement the frameworks you've just presented?
Yeah, so my experience again just relates to Limerick, even though I led the overall work package of community exchange. I think it's very labor intensive to have this citizen-centered approach. That has been a revelation, I think, for the cities that we're collaborating with, that there's a certain responsibility when you initiate this relationship with people, and there's a burden. You have to follow through, and you have to mentor and support and guide their journey of engagement with the project. So I think that will be something that will come through in our evaluation process is just how labor intensive it is, but how important that is also to support people through this transition.
Okay. Any more questions? Please.
Thank you very much for presentation. I would like to ask a question related this project impacts at multiple levels, and one of level you mentioned is behavior change. And of course, behavior is a very, very crucial point in all this field, we would say. And question is, was it this behavior change point of research and point of topic of research in your project, monitoring of this behavior or evaluation of impact?
Okay, the question is about, the speaker says this aspect of behavioral change is very interesting. And could you say something about the research methodology that you apply to investigate the impact in that area?
Okay, so again, within the Positive Energy campaign, there are kind of project-wide kind of KPIs and which are being deployed, but within Limerick, we're measuring empowerment, and this kind of relates to this idea of the empowered energy citizen. So there's a recent paper from Australia which has kind of done an overview of citizen empowerment and energy transitions, which kind of expands or develops Sherry Arnstein's ladder of participation idea with a particular focus on clean energy transition. So that's work in progress in terms of how we measure empowerment from people who've interacted not just with the campaign, but with the whole innovation ecosystem, with the innovation lab, with our program, with the entire program of events that we've been running. I think in terms of behavior change models, we did look at community-based social marketing and the trans-theoretical model of behavior change. I think it's in terms of energy behavior, a lot of the focus is on changing a light bulb to a more energy efficient light bulb, and that can be a very effective campaign, really targeted. But the complexity and scale of changes mean that these models don't really directly apply, I suppose, because we're really trying to build capacity for change within people to explore the full spectrum of changes and how they might be able to shape those. So this is really, I suppose, like I really feel we're at an edge of knowledge in terms of how we develop approaches in this area to address its complexity.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to the next one. Again, we look at positive energy districts as the new energy concept in which the energy citizens need to get their role. So Beryl, please.
Yeah. Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
And can you see my screen? Full screen?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So let's start. Yes, today we're going to talk about our Making City project for the replication activities that we designed under Making City for the PED co-designs between the follower cities. And I will share this presentation with my colleagues, Yok from TNO and Cyril from the Haynes University of Applied Sciences in Groningen. For our follower cities, we try to design a process for defining their own citizen and stakeholder engagement strategy, since we do have 6 follower cities in Making City project, and mainly from Spain, Italy, Bulgaria, Poland, Slovakia, and Turkey. So I would like to mention that first we designed the methodology for PED designs in follower cities under the replication activities in the project, and it's consisting of 6 phases. And the third, after identification of the PED concept boundary, boundary in the cities, there is the parallel process starting with the citizen participation, involvement, and the technical designs of PEDs. So at this phase, the stakeholder and the citizen engagement strategy should be developed by each city, which is followed by the technical designs of positive energy districts, and an investment plan is also aligned at this process. And the outcome is a proposal of new regulations in each city. So for this process, we helped the public authorities in follower cities to first identify their actors, that who would like to take into account for designing positive energy districts and map the actors as a first step. Then we ask them to define their main objectives, such as what is the purpose to be achieved within this strategy, and how would you like to reach the positive energy district implementation with the actors that you have defined. So, and in which sectors would you like to concentrate on along this process? Then, after that step, we encourage them to detect the main barriers or the bottlenecks, let's say, to achieve the objectives, and also identifying enablers is also a very important step to understand the advantages and disadvantages for citizen involvement in the design of positive energy district. And after defining all of these barriers, defining the solutions is the next step to overcome, of course, the identified barriers or the bottlenecks. And as a last step, we ask them to identify some tools and resources, maybe some already going on tools that are being utilized in their cities, such as questionnaires, let's say, or workshop methods like Word Cafe or other citizen engagement activities, and also competitions as well. So as the first step for capacity building for capacity building activities in public authorities of the cities, these steps turned into some questions about, as I said, for the objectives, what you want to ask to your citizens, and on which topics, in which sectors, etc., to design your PEDs in the identified boundary, and for the barriers, what are difficulties that you may encounter in this process. Could be anything to define, from your perspective, from the municipality perspective, and mapping of the local actors, what kind of sectors will be involved in the design process, and what kind of tools that you would like to use along this process. So after this point, after we gathered their answers to these questions, we try to identify some questionnaires, a unified questionnaire consisting of general sections and technical modules to ask to citizens at this stage. So first we start with the public authorities, and then we try to get into more detailed way with the citizens. So I give floor to my colleague now, Cyril, that he will go on about the questionnaires. Cyril.
Yes, thanks, Beryl. So in order to keep the questionnaires a bit manageable for the follower citizens in terms of the amount of questions, as Beryl mentioned, is split into two sections: a general section, which is a standard compulsory component of the survey, and a second component, which is a more modular facultative part. And first, the general questionnaire consists of 21 questions, demographic questions such as age, gender, occupation, education, and income, questions which relate to residents, such as building type and whether they are owner or tenant, and also the size of their household. In addition, we also ask questions related to sustainable energy, such as to what extent they're interested in implementing energy saving measures and whether they're interested in collective energy saving and production solutions with their neighbors. We also included questions that were related to the KPIs of the Making City project. For example, what percentage of household income is spent on electricity and heating to measure energy poverty, and to what extent their municipality encourages a healthy lifestyle. So the last series of questions are related to the local municipality, such as how citizens would like to be involved in the energy transition, such as personal contact, meetings, or by traditional social media, and to what extent they trust their municipality, and they could indicate this on a scale of 1 to 10. Can I see the next slide, please? The second part consisted of technical modules. The follower cities could also choose 2 modules from a list of 6 possible topics. So the questionnaires, most of them follow a similar format, asking the citizen about the familiarity and interest on a variety of topics. So the first one that you can see is about energy consumption, which includes questions such as familiarity or interest on different types of insulation or passive energy consumption reduction systems. The second module was about energy efficiency of the building, which includes questions about energy management systems and energy efficiency systems. The next was about energy generation, such as solar, wind, hydro, bio and waste energy. The fourth one consists of questions regarding energy flexibility, meaning energy marketplaces and power storage. The fifth one was about mobility, including questions about their opinion on electric vehicles, charging poles, neighborhood taxis, and the use of shared cars. And the last one consists of questions about local energy communities, such as the interest or familiarity with the collective ownership of energy installations, peer-to-peer exchanges, collective smart grids, and other local energy community services. Next slide, please. So the answers from which we got from the follower cities will be handled by my colleague Joke.
Okay, thank you, Cyril. Yes, thank you. Yeah, the questionnaire that Beryl just talked about, these is a summary of the results that we got from the drivers and the barriers that the municipalities, the follower cities experience. And if we look at the objectives that these follower cities have, that the main objectives are related to get to know the citizens' needs and visions on the city district. It's directly related to energy and sustainability measures as well as indirectly. So there are a lot of follower cities, 4 out of 6, that explicitly mention that they are interested in the citizens' well-being as well and how to improve this according to the citizens themselves. So it's a side interest and it's related to the project KPIs as well. Desired insights that the municipality or follower cities would like to have, they range from very specific opinions about products and services that they can offer in their cities, as well as about how to improve the living standard of the citizens. So it's a very wide range of interest that we find in the follower cities. And what we see, well, it's mirrored in the plans as well, I guess. Some of the follower cities have really concrete high-level plans or high-level plans, and others have very concrete plans for specific neighborhoods and the solutions they can and want to implement. So in terms of barriers and drivers, it's a really broad area of interest that these follower cities have that we need to address in the Making City project. That same thing is mirrored in the target groups that these follower cities focus on. I took this picture from the Bridge program, the EU program. They have this overview of target groups ranging from residential demo users to industrial users. And you have a subdivision for each cluster of users here. In short, in Making City, we do find all these different target groups that play a role in the follower cities and that we need to address if we are going to design these PED areas. Could you go to the next, Bill? Thank you. So some of the concrete barriers that these follower cities mentioned, especially last year, is that the effect of COVID-19, that it's really difficult to do anything in citizen engagement if you talk about physical events. So a lot has to be done online. Another barrier is that there's low awareness. The follower cities experience low awareness in the interest in citizens. It's really hard to get people enthusiastic for the energy transition in general, a sustainable means, and this specifically is the case in difficult target groups like the elderly people that are hard to reach if you don't reach them physically, but also a category like the people living in energy poverty, for example. They have different worries. They are not interested in sustainable means. They have difficulties paying the rent at the end of the month. And another last important thing that we found in the follower cities is they themselves, the municipalities, have limited time. There's high costs involved to get citizen engagement up and running and to get the energy transition up and running. And they also experience a limited authorization to take action themselves. So some of the solutions they proposed were additional financial and technical support from public bodies, but also the energy markets, parties playing a role in the energy markets. They are aware that they need to raise more awareness about the energy transition in the local community, and they need to have the right platforms available to do so, but you also have to offer them at the right time. So it's related to what citizens already know in which stage they are of awareness, and you need to fine-tune your own communication towards that. Training programs with different stakeholders involved in the energy transition would be a good idea as well, according to the follower sittings, especially to share information, but also to enable a better collaboration between different partners that have to move at the same time. And then the sharing of information on renewable energy through open data platforms. And they haven't been very specific about this last point, but we see that there's more and more traction to this idea of having these open data platforms from which everybody can use the data to get their own products and services up and running and design their own products and services, get insights, etc. Could you go to the next video? Yes. Thank you. So the tools that follower cities already have used in terms of citizen engagement and how to get this up and running are, for example, hackathons, workshops, webinars, ateliers, online surveys. Well, you can read them all. There's quite a lot already being applied in practice. And the tools that they plan to use in the future, these are more tuned to the digital participation to get that up and running, also due to COVID, of course, and we're still not out of that situation. But they are looking at social media at the moment and broadcasting possibilities, also local television and newspapers. Festivals, they want to make use of festivals that are happening in and around cities. The webinar platforms, mobile applications, educational materials is also one mentioned. I think that Natalia might have a really interesting presentation on that one. And then e-participation and consultations are also planned for future application. And then, yes, the recommendations for the follower cities, or at least the conclusions that we could draw. At the same time, with these questionnaires that have been designed and put out for the follower cities and the questionnaires that Cyril talked about for the citizens, we have been developing a unified citizen engagement strategy in the lighthouse cities. So these are the front runners in the project. And these strategies are focused on incorporating these different stakeholders and how they could communicate with each other and collaborate in a better way to speed up the whole energy transition in the PED design neighborhoods. So this is really a good development that we have been working on. It also addresses the current barriers that these follower cities experience. So we're almost done with this strategy and ready to test it in practice. It's been implemented in the lighthouse cities as well, so the evaluation will take place this year. This strategy also provides a good framework it's like a process description, and it provides different methodologies and tools, also the ones that the follower cities would like to use in the coming year. So the digital ones, but this strategy, this framework plots these different methods and tools and gives advice on when to use which methods and tools. So that could be very beneficial for the follower cities as well. And well, Cyril started the presentation with the last conclusion. Citizen engagement should be a part of, as early as possible, of a project or a program that you start in terms of making these PED designs and getting them up and running. And what we have seen in practice is that sometimes citizen engagement starts too late, and this social economic analysis that you should have in the beginning of the project, it's following the technical analysis. So often you already have the technical means and decided upon what you want to do, and then you do the social economic analysis, and you see that it doesn't really fit. So it's a good idea to do both together and make sure that what you want to do technically also corresponds with what is socially economically desirable in a city district.
Yeah. Thank you, Jörg. And just for a conclusion, maybe I can just say a few words. I would like to say that, I mean, preparing this kind of unified questionnaires consisting of technical modules is not easy for different city contexts to our 6 follower cities. And even we prepared this, some cities wanted to change some questions, actually, mostly regarding the sixth module, which is the energy communities, because the terminology is a bit new for them, and the students do not understand very well. So some cities already adapted some questions to their city context and socio-cultural contexts, actually. But the energy awareness on PET designs is increasing in our follower cities by the help of these tools, these questionnaires, and I think also, for example, in some cities, because of by the help of these questionnaires, some activities on developing energy communities is also encouraged by the help of these questionnaires. So we hope that new energy communities will be developed within our follower cities soon, which will also help us on the PET co-design process as well. So thank you. We are here also for questions. Just I need to leave for another presentation, so my colleagues will be here for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. We've got less than half an hour left to solve this complex issue. So I'll take one question from the audience. Please. Please.
Well, I found it very interesting, your research, because I could see that some of your barriers are some of the barriers that we have seen in Basque Country. So I just want to ask you, I know you made some recommendation there, but is there any mechanism to work around this barrier? For instance, elderly people says when we got a question, then I won't live to see that change. And some people who are living in our target area says, I can merely make ends meet. How could you think that I could afford the pay of that investment, even they are subsidized by the government? So in looking this picture, is there any bigger contest in order to not let them behind, if not get them into the PET development, because otherwise it would be very difficult, as you mentioned.
Yeah, just a brief answer. The question is from the people that have low income, no investment opportunity. They cannot participate. They feel left out. Or they say, well, I will not be seeing the benefits. The short answer: what can we do to keep them involved or to keep them
Shall I take this one, Cyril? Okay, that's a very good point, because what we see is a lack in some citizens. We see a lack of being able to invest and being willing to invest, and you mentioned both as a barrier. It's correct. I'm very glad that at least 4 of the 6 follower cities also want to address the living situation, living conditions of people, and the well-being of people, because I think there is the answer. If you can improve well-being in general and not just focus on energy transition, but solve multiple problems along with the energy transition, I think then you have a better solution and get these people on board as well. And in one of the lighthouse cities, we are going to start specific research focused on energy poverty, because this is a really difficult target group. What you can do at the same time is develop new policies that are specifically targeting these difficult to reach target groups, or difficult to move target groups in energy poverty. And we're experimenting with this in one of the lighthouse cities. So stay tuned, I would say.
Thank you very much. Very important target group for citizens' engagements are the younger people, not only because they are energy citizens to become in the future, but they also already have a role to play now. So, Natalia, please.
Okay, let me see if this. So can you see my screen?
We cannot see it. We cannot see it, Natalia.
No?
Not yet.
Okay.
Are you?
Maybe it's because I have 2 monitors. Let me see.
You are clicking on the icon of the screen, right?
Yes, yes. Maybe it's because I had 2 monitors, so maybe that's why it didn't work. Let me see. Share screen. Yes. You don't say it yet.
No, not yet. If not, anybody else as the slide of Natalia and can share the screen for her.
I can. Maybe that's a good point. I will share my.
Yeah, indeed. I'm doing it, but it still gives me
Let me share my screen.
a red line in the.
So you see now my screen, correct?
Good.
Okay,
Yeah,
you just
perfect.
talk and say
Yes,
when
thank you.
This is on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. My name is Natalia Romero. I represent one of the partners of the Energy project, which is a Northwest European project from Interreg. And this talk is about activating positive energy values, how to involve our schools as leading labs for the development of new energy concepts. Next slide, please. So the Energy project, I'll first very briefly give you the context of where this project starts. We are halfway the project, considering COVID also situation. But the scope of this project was energizing education to reduce green gas emissions. That's what Energy stands for. It takes a very multidisciplinary approach. So we have universities from energy section, on the engineering side, social sciences, design, involving as well startups on monitoring energy and indoor climate. So a very multidisciplinary group. We're working with 6 countries in the Northwest European region, and also 2 secondary schools on each of these countries. So 12 secondary schools as our living labs or demonstration sites. Next slide, please. The focus of our project Emerge is basically engaging the actors, the school actors in the secondary school, so students, teachers, as well as administration staff, in developing their own low-cost interventions. So we see the need for secondary school buildings. Most of them are very old buildings from the 40s, which are very inefficient. They have to reach zero CO2 emissions by 2050, which will require probably a lot of investment in terms of infrastructure. Well, we would like to bridge this gap from that moment to that moment in looking at low-cost interventions, most likely in the area of behavior change, social interactions, and educational activities. Please, next slide. And our approach has to do with, of course, integrating the energy needs for lowering consumption, but also the needs of the school actors, the students, the teachers, and the administration staff, in what is relevant for them to also have a comfortable learning experience, but also feel actively involved in possible strategies for lowering energy consumption in their schools. And we see data as a promising tool, as a material for us to give them tools for developing the strategies together as a community. Please, next slide. Oh yeah, well, so I did miss one slide that I was adding. The type of methodology we use is a mixed method. No, it's good. It's good. I will just before I start with this slide, say something about the mixed methodology that we have used so far in this project, since we have a number of, as I said, different disciplines involved. So we're doing surveys on building infrastructure, technical infrastructure. We're doing surveys on historical use of energy data, maybe by looking at their energy bills. We're doing monitoring by sensing energy consumption at the moment right now, and indoor climate variables in the classrooms. We're also doing sociological surveys on energy management and comfort at the different stakeholders in the schools, as well as co-design sessions also on energy management and comfort, and as well as doing sessions on teaching and educating regarding energy. What I will be mostly focusing on this talk, just to use the time efficiently, is mostly on our preliminary outcomes on the co-design sessions we have been running with teachers and students across the different schools. Co-design sessions are our expertise from the TU Delft industrial design faculty, in order to get really a good understanding on our stakeholders' needs and values regarding a specific topic, in this case energy, but also education, as that's our context. And looking at the opportunities for increasing energy management, or the control on energy, and as well as comfort. So from these sessions, we have identified a couple of archetypes from the students as well as the teacher's perspective. We have for example, the changer is one of our students' archetypes on the students who are really already quite motivated, maybe from their home raising, as well as other sources, as motivating in terms of what energy means for them, and how would they like to be actively involved in energy activities. But on the other extreme, we also have what we call the likers or the lurkers, who are students who don't yet find their way to get involved in this, and don't yet see how what interests them in order to be actively involved in energy management or controlling energy. Next slide, please. From these archetypes, we are also trying to understand what are the needs they have regarding their position with energy in their school activities. And there's of course represents also the archetypes. So there's the ones who really have the need to be actively involved to further optimize their classrooms, for example. Also, they have the need to engage in debates or even discuss what are possible, like change ideas on what could be best ways to address certain issues in their schools. But also the ones who still don't know what position do they have into this, and how could they actually be involved at all, if not at all. Please, next slide. From this, we have been now working on specific goals to further develop in this project. As I said, our approach is to see what's the data, or where's the role of data as a technical material to increase engagement or to facilitate engagement in controlling energy as a community. So we're defining preliminary goals, so we can very soon implement our first version of this Energy platform. And these goals has to do that represents some of our archetypes in the need of understanding climate in the classrooms as a very primarily need, as comfort is what they actually sense first when they are doing their educational activities at school. And also not only understanding, but also use it as a means to engage each other and to create positive ideas on how they can actually control their climate best for all of them. And at the same time, they also see the need to sort of break an attitude of conformism that most of them sense, and primarily the changers sense in the rest of their school members, as an attitude that doesn't allow them, or that's sort of based on basing on beliefs and traditions, instead of just trying to break certain status quo and do something different. Next, please. In my next couple of slides, I would like to briefly tell you where are we going to. So where do we see the opportunities for this Energy platform to activate our school members. As I said, we are interested to see what data can do, and what is the role of data as a technical material in this. What we have been exploring is that data could help us to engage them in very different type of interactions that could address our different archetypes, like challenges, debates, dilemmas, experimenting and assessing different strategies or interventions, and reflecting on them. So all these opportunities could be used. We see them as possible interventions to address behavioral change, new social interactions, educational material, as well as some maybe changes in the organization. And this could have, we expect, a very positive impact on not only energy reduction, but also the increase of comfort or other measures that has to do with well-being, as well as energy literacy. And finally, we see this as building up long-term values that will address basic needs, this taken by the self-determination theory on relatedness, autonomy, and competence, which will be we believe very good answers for active citizens in the future. And that will then result in these low-cost solutions that we are expecting to enable this community to build. Well, that's in short what I would like to present today. Thank you.
Let me see. Yeah.
Stop presenting.
Stop. So I suggest we.
You should go on stop sharing.
Yeah, Chair, please, a question from the audience.
So you talked about the different types that you identified, different types of students and teachers, different types of ideas what to change. Do you already have any idea on things you do want to change based on those different types, or is it first only the accumulation of data?
So could you repeat the last?
Do you already have any plans on how to act and what to do with the data that you gathered, or are you still only in the data collection phase?
The question was on the typology of the different students and teachers. So you're getting data. Are you already designing your interventions? So your activities directed and specified for the different groups?
Yes. So our principle here is to develop, as I said, this Emerge platform, which will have different qualities of interactions to engage these different archetypes in it. So for some of them, the quality of being actively involved in a debate, that's for the changer, be very engaging. Others would be interested in sort of follow others doing something and see how in a way they might or not be engaging. So we're looking at different levels of interactions with this by these different type of modalities of engagement.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I will just go to the last presentation because of time. And Leah, please. And the shorter you keep it, the more time we have left for questions.
Okay, so I understand. I will do my best so please check if you're in a moment. You are seeing the presentation? Can you please confirm?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you. I will try to be brief, although I understand. I hope we have some flexibility here. So I'm Leah Patricio from INESC and from the Positive Project, and together with Yoke Court, we will be presenting some results and approaches of the Positive Project. And we will focus on how to co-create citizen engagement with sustainable energy solutions. So just a very brief introduction of the Positive Project, which aims at helping historical cities to become greener, smarter, and more livable, but at the same time respecting their cultural heritage. So we have two lighthouse cities of Évora and Alkmaar, and then we have 6 follow cities. So the idea is to leverage upon smart solutions for citizen engagement towards sustainable energy behaviors. And the point, what we are going to talk about today, is how we approach the definition of these strategies, not the strategies themselves, but how we approached, how we co-create these strategies. And the idea and our approach has been to start, and this was the starting point, to start with interviews and workshops with the citizens from lighthouses and other stakeholders, and try to understand the context, the citizen engagement behaviors, their goals, and then developing a general framework for citizen engagement strategies, then exploring how lighthouses can explore and implement, and then each lighthouse develops their own tailored engagement strategies. And in parallel, we will iterate, and we are iterating then through co-creation workshops with fellow cities. So based on what we learn, we again, and we have already undertook this, interviews with fellow cities to understand their context, their issues, and then do co-creation workshops to explore the different possibilities for engagement strategies that are tailored to each specific fellow city. So from the first round of interviews and the studies, what we did was, especially in the lighthouses, to try to understand the drivers and barriers, the context for citizen engagement with these sustainable transitions and sustainable energy services. And on the one hand, and this is inspired and adapted from the Arnstein letter, but we find out that this is no surprise. We have citizens and the large majority who are non-active participants, so they are open to receive some information, they show some interest, but they are not still using this kind of solutions. Then we have the citizens who are active participants. They already have this kind of sustainable solutions which they use, they more proactively manage their energy consumption and production. And then we found a small group of empowered citizens who are willing not only to use, but also to share information, to actively participate in the co-design of solutions and strategies, to experiment them and to become advocates. So our general framework to work with the different cities was that, okay, so we have different types and different groups of citizens who are either, you can say, they have different citizen engagement levels, or they may be at different citizen engagement phases of their journey. And we will talk about this later. And the idea would be for the cities to think and explore how they could target these different groups of citizens with different roles. For example, maybe for the non-active participants, promoting open innovation is too soon. So it's better suited for the empowered participation. So on the one hand, this matrix helped us to identify which kind of goals and approaches could be most effective for the different types of citizens and with citizen engagement levels. On the other hand, we try to see these levels of engagements as somehow a journey. So our idea was that so the citizens don't start as ambassadors. Many times they start as wondering and wanting to know some information, for example, about sustainable solutions. And then they can go a step further into, okay, then I'm interested and I want to choose different sustainable energy solutions. Then I choose and I use and I install and I proactively manage my energy consumption. And then I start sharing my experience. I start contributing with co-design to innovate the sustainable energy solutions in my city. And then I become ambassador. So this, with these post-its, was a kind of work that we did. We did both workshops with citizens, but also with cities to understand, and the green post-its, the red post-its are a bit, where are my citizens? What kind of citizen engagement levels do I find in the citizens in my city? What are the good points and the barriers for, let's say, adopting this citizen engagement behaviors? And the discussion was also, so how can I support citizens in moving along this citizen engagement journey? So this was one of the collaborative efforts and the several workshops that we undertook on digging deep into the journey of the citizen towards higher levels of engagement. What are the barriers? What are their needs? Also, on the solution side and on the goal side, we also explore with the citizens and particularly with the cities, what kind of citizen engagement strategies and solutions can we adopt and can we design to, for example, for the lower levels of engagement, how can we raise awareness? If we want to move citizens towards higher levels of engagement, starting using this kind of solutions, how can we support the choice of solutions, the use of solutions? So in the project, in the Positive project, as each lighthouse city particularly, they have multiple solutions from engagement platforms, from physical hubs, from sharing platforms. So how could we use and leverage upon these solutions to foster citizen engagement by targeting specific citizen engagement levels and with different goals. So this is a bit of what we have done so far, and I will pass to Joke to talk more about the citizen engagement approaches in Alkmaar. Joke, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Leah. Yes, I would like to talk about, we follow a little bit of a different approach in Alkmaar in the Netherlands, since the stakeholders involved in the PED design in Alkmaar are mostly housing corporations. So citizens are involved, but as a tenant. And we've been looking at housing corporations specifically in Alkmaar, therefore. There's a few characteristics of housing corporations that makes them very interesting compared to municipalities. They're often front runners in a neighborhood. They own half of the neighborhood or most of it. So it's their own property that they are going to make sustainable. They are better organized often in terms of having connections to the citizens in a specific neighborhood, their renters. They have different organizational structure compared to local initiatives, etc., which is interesting also from a legal perspective. And they are often connected or are taking part in a network of different stakeholders that are involved in the energy transition. So that makes them different from other stakeholders involved in the energy transition. Could you go to the next, Leah, please? So what we have done is we have been studying how housing corporations make their own housing more sustainable and how they involve their tenants in the whole trajectory of making this sustainable. Now, housing corporations in the Netherlands, if they want to do a big renovation, you need to have 70% of your tenants to agree on your plans. So it's important to get them on board. What we did was we looked with two housing corporations from Alkmaar and Woonwaard, how they acted in the past and how they could improve on their own citizen engagement or tenant engagement strategies. And that resulted in a workbook. And that's the next slide. Leah, please. Thank you. And what we did was we studied their strategies to get tenants on board and to involve their tenants in renovating houses, large-scale renovations. And we made some improvements together with these housing corporations, and that resulted in this handbook, an overview with different process steps. So we start at step one, describe the residents in the context. What are you going to look at? What is your situation? The second step is to distinguish the different target groups, resident groups. And it's interesting, you have highly educated starters in this tenant group, but you also have the people at the lower ends and that need to make ends meet every day again. So these are the people often living in energy poverty, for example. You need to distinguish between these different target groups to formulate different engagement strategies to get these different tenants on board. The third step is to set up a participation strategy, and the fourth step to formulate your communication strategy. How are you going to involve the people in participation? And for that, we have a means matrix. There's different tools plotted on different things that you want to have in terms of participation or communication with your tenants. And then the final step is the implementation of your whole strategy to execute it and to evaluate it throughout. So this is very brief what we have been developing in Alkmaar. It's again a kind of process, like how are you going to start and to what goal are you working to? And in these different steps, we again plotted different tools and methodologies that you can do, that you can use with your tenants to get them involved and enthusiastic about your plans and to make it successful, to co-design with your tenants, etc. But for each step, we have different tools because the focus in each step is different. So, well, this is the handbook. It's in. It will be out in a few months, like 2 months. It should be out, and yeah, I hope you will be interested in it. Download it, and please provide us with feedback as well if it's out and you read it.
Thank you very much. We almost closed. One question I take for the last speakers.
I'd like to ask Natalia in regards to the presentation when she was talking about educating kids in schools. I think that it's a reflection and a question. We are teaching our kids mathematics because it will be useful for them in the future. It's good that we are teaching them about energy values, right? So how this exercise could be replicated at a more European level, in the sense that making this content become a standard in education, because I think it's important that we incorporate this in the educational programs of all countries, right?
Okay, this was not a question for the last speaker, but still a very interesting one. Natalia, did you get the question? How do we upscale and replicate?
Could you repeat that? I think it was focused on the educational material, or
Education, the teaching of kids for energy values, the work you are doing in schools. How are we going to upscale and replicate that?
Yeah. Well, so indeed, our intention is for this platform to really become a tool for themselves to further develop modules into it. And indeed, one of our presenters here at this workshop, Sanders, is looking at the business model of how we can scale this up. So we're looking at how these different products we are developing, the platform, teaching modules, can become materials for other schools to take over and further implement in their own context. Further on, the teaching is also, we're creating these future citizens. So if we teach them how to use data to apply it as a tool for engagement, for having agency on controlling energy and other factors, we expect also that having a long-term impact. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to all the speakers. We continue to work together on a future publication because it's essential in this complex, innovative world that we exchange our experience in and create some meta results. Yesterday, in other words of thanks, yesterday we had a 2 hours walk across Rome in the sunset, and then afterwards we had 2 hours of great dinner in Trastevere. I want to thank the organizers for giving me an excuse to come to Rome in this time of year. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Salut.